Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are watching this, and welcome to Link Up Leaders, your direct link to leaders in supply chain and e-commerce. My name is Lisa Kinski. I'm your producer and co-host, and as always, joined by Francois Geoffrey. Francois, how are you doing today?
Amazing. How are you?
I'm good. Amazing is great. It must not be snowing anymore. You must be warmer.
No, it's freezing, but I'm on my second cup of coffee, so I have a new wind of energy.
Regular coffee or mushroom coffee?
I don't have the mushroom coffee up here. It's all the Starbucks blonde roast, the
Gotcha
stuff that I get when I'm running late and can't make my own coffee.
All right. Well, darn, some of our acoustic foam just fell. That's unfortunate. Anyway, that totally threw me off. Today, we are speaking with Andrew Kirk. And if everybody remembers from way back in the beginning of the pod, he was actually recommended to us by Tyler Scalzi with the Grow Network. So Tyler, you should be logged on and watching, bro. If you're not, where are you at? But let's go ahead and bring Andrew on. Andrew, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. So what cup of coffee are you on? Because it's much earlier where you are.
Yeah. I also have a Starbucks as a black with some cream in it. That's all I got.
Awesome. And you're calling us from Vegas, right?
Right. Yes. I'm actually at the Aria, calling from the Aria right now.
Very nice. I've never been to Vegas. I'm very, very jealous.
We're going to have to go.
Come see our warehouse. You have to come see my warehouse, and yeah, for sure. It'll be nice.
Awesome. Next trade show. I'm sure there's going to be a few trade shows. ASD goes down there, and
that would be great.
Figure it out.
Andrew, let's go on ahead and just jump straight in, dear. We know that you know Tyler. We know that you're in logistics, but tell us about your background. How did you find yourself in this world?
Yeah, I mean, geez, that's what I've always done. I actually started at UPS when I was like 18 years old. They had a great tuition reimbursement program, and I just worked my way through college, and I transitioned. There's so many different roles at UPS. So, yeah, I mean, it was my foundation. And then after I graduated college, I stayed there for a few more years, and then I moved on to some different bigger players like Kohl's and Ecolab, and then went to a German company named Vorwerk, is a $4 billion company. And so I've just been in this industry for a while. And so it started at 18. I was actually studying insurance, but then I was like, you know what, I like this, and I just stuck to it.
You're studying insurance?
Yeah. So my mom has a big insurance company in Dallas with farmers, and I was like, okay, I could just take that over, right?
Yeah.
And so, but then I started working at UPS, and then things changed. I was like, hey, I'm really passionate about this. I love it. I love what we do. And so I went from transportation to like logistics. I went to fulfillment. I went to a lot of different areas. So I got a well-rounded perspective in the entire process of how the supply chain works.
Awesome. And so you had a question. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I was just going to ask what fascinates you, because I don't find too many people that are actually passionate about this. To a lot of people, this is very boring. I find it absolutely fascinating. I dive deep into these things. I look at like supply chains in other countries. I'm like, how the hell are they doing this stuff? What sort of drove you to this passion?
Nothing happens without supply chain. You know, supply chain is the anchor of everything. If you go online and you place an order for a product on a website, it doesn't get to you without supply chain, right? And so supply chain is always changing. It's always challenging. It's always there's always someone raising the bar to do things differently. And so there's so many different options and ways to do it, to execute. It's just you never get bored, ever. And we really impact lives, you know. We really do impact lives in what we do. There's companies like, I don't know, I'm sure you know Avon or Mary Kay and guys like this. Well, these are women that buy product wholesale that they then sell retail to pay for their life, right? Companies like 3PLs, we actually service a lot of multi-level marketing companies. And so we're sending product to these ladies that are then selling it. If it doesn't get there on time, let's say Lisa orders a product from a person and then the order comes 2 weeks late, she's probably going to cancel it. Well, this is impacting the life of an individual woman that uses that money to pay her rent. So, I mean, that's one quick example of how logistics and fulfillment really drive customer satisfaction and the way people live.
That's very interesting to me because I do have a Mary Kay consultant that I use, funny enough, for skincare. And she's always able to get us our stuff super fast. And I know like back in the day, if you were a Mary Kay consultant, you had an SUV with all of your product in the back of your car. And I was like, I know she doesn't do this. Like she's an optometrist full time. There's no way she's like picking and packing her own orders. So that's interesting. I'd always wondered how she got me my stuff so fast.
Well, so now that the in that industry, especially like Mary Kay, it's how it's also raised the bar. A lot of times they'll place orders and that product will go directly to you. Whereas in the past, she would place an order for all her customers. She'd get a big box with all this product, and then she would distribute it to her customers herself. It's good and bad. The good is you get your product faster if you're buying from her.
Mm-hmm.
The bad is she loses the personal touch to you. When she used to have the product and then she would come to you and she would see you, she'd say, hey, how's everything going? Maybe she could get more sales or see how you like the product. So you lose the personal touch, but then the ease of receiving the product is quite different. You're not worried for her to come in her truck to give you your skincare product that you're out of,
Yeah, that's a good point. I know that there are some MLMs that are still following that old school method. My girlfriend works for one of them, but then there's some where you can't do that at all. There's some independent wine consultant companies that's an MLM that you have to ship it directly to the person from the winery or from the company's warehouse because like liquor laws, like you can't be getting cases and cases and cases of wine to your house. There is a limit. So
yeah, it's a little bit, once you get into wine and alcohol, it's a little bit more complex, but there are companies that, like you said, have come to the direct-to-consumer model where even the consultants send directly to their consumer. And then there's the ones that chose to keep that personal touch where they want their consultants hand delivering product to the lady, so they have that connection and that constant feedback. And there's no answer to which one's better, but I will tell you the order coming directly to you is the more popular option right now.
For sure. And so you've mentioned working with like MLMs and stuff. Do you work with a lot of like Amazon sellers too? Because I actually saw on your site that the integrations doesn't list Amazon. So I'm curious.
Oh yeah, we do work with Amazon. We have a direct integration. We in my company, we focus on direct to consumer. A lot of our customers also do FBA as well. So they'll use us to warehouse their inventory. And then as inventory levels are running low in Amazon, they'll let us know, hey, we need to send more product, and we would process it, send it to Amazon, and then have that inducted so it gets their inventory levels up and they can continue selling. Amazon's quite tricky. It's quite tricky. Amazon is they are hurting a lot of e-commerce companies. And it's either you love Amazon and it's the way the way you make money, or you're trying to figure out how to get the hell out of Amazon and move it to your website. A lot of e-commerce companies right now are trying to figure out, I'm doing 75% of sales on Amazon, 25% on my website. How do I get it from Amazon to my website? And so, and there's a lot of reasons for cost and having control. But yeah, I mean, it's a total strategy. One example that I dealt with last year was we had a customer that just shipped their product to Amazon, like 85%, and then they had their website and they would keep 15, 20% of their website with us, right? But then their website started blowing up and Amazon was very flat, so they needed that inventory. They're like, hey, my inventory's in Amazon, I need to pull it from there, let's get to our 3PL so we can start shipping these customers orders from there. They couldn't. Amazon wouldn't release it, and so it was like pulling teeth. And so with Amazon, once your inventory is there, you really lose control. And that was another challenge. So a lot of e-commerce companies, and they're very wise to do this, is have partnerships with good 3PLs, let them manage your inventory and replenish Amazon as needed. Because Amazon, not only is it very controlling, but it's also very expensive compared to 3PLs.
Yeah, that's the big thing that I keep hearing is the FBA fees. They'll just eat you alive. But if the majority of your business is being sold through Amazon, then it kind of does make sense because they do fulfill it so quickly. But yeah, definitely having a good partner at 3PL, especially with the 200 limit. We've been preaching that since I started, at least a year ago. So almost a year ago.
Right. Yeah, you started at a weird time, right? I mean, 2020 was a very, very weird time, particularly not just for Amazon sellers. I think for e-commerce globally. Right. I mean, people couldn't go into stores, they couldn't try clothes on, and they couldn't buy their essential needs. And Amazon had this pivot where they restricted the send-in limits for Amazon sellers, and e-commerce companies were taking advantage of that. They were saying, hey, everything is switching online. We have to use new solutions, where we used to just depend on Amazon. And I know tons of companies that purely built very, very successful companies, like extremely 7, 8, 9-figure sellers on Amazon. And all they ever did was FBA. And 2020 was kind of a crop shit where it was a wake up call. Andrew, how did you see this transition go? I guess from 2019 into I guess we could call it the year of COVID, right? In supply chain and warehousing.
Yeah, I mean, it added the complexity definitely went up, right? Everything 3PL businesses had a high demand. We were in very high demand because obviously, just like you brought up the Amazon challenge. I mean, the reason Amazon did that is because they were running out of space, and they were warehousing stuff that wasn't selling, that wasn't moving. So they don't make money. I mean, they charge a lot, but they don't make, their big profit margin isn't by holding your inventory. It's by shipping it, right? The more they ship, the more money they make. And so they were very strategic about putting limits based on your sales volume, because they know what you're selling. They know on a monthly basis, if you're selling a skincare product, selling 1,000. Well, you don't need 20,000 units because that's 20 months of inventory coverage. You only need 3 months of inventory coverage. And when it gets down to 1, well, you can send more now. And so that's kind of the reason. But for 3PLs, to answer your question, I mean, we had a great year. I mean, all of them, everyone I talked to blew up. Customers were online. They were going directly to websites. I mean, the carriers were blowing up. I mean, UPS, FedEx, they have their own stories where they start charging so much more money for shipping the same boxes because they were at capacity in a lot of fulfillments, a lot of their transportation hubs. So it's a pretty cool place to be. A lot of 3PLs got hurt too because they didn't take the right strategy. And I can give examples, but
let's hear.
Yeah, I mean, like I can tell you, with high demand comes a lot of prospects, right? So if people need more 3PL because it's COVID and they got it, your phone rings more, and like customers need more fulfillment, they need more warehousing. Amazon's not taking my stuff. I need to increase my inventory levels, things like that. Well, some 3PLs are like, yes, I'll take you all day long. So they bit off more than they can chew, right? And so who did that affect? That ended up affecting their core customers that had been with them for a while. I heard stories. Actually, I not heard stories. I know a story of a customer that I actually onboarded in Vegas. They have a very niche product, very easy, and their fulfillment center was taking like 2.5 weeks to ship their orders.
Now, what would you consider a very easy product to ship?
Small, lightweight,
small.
less than 10 pounds.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and there's falls within that realm, right? And they weren't a huge company, but they're not small. I mean, they were doing, 300 to 700, 800 orders per day. So it's not that difficult.
Sizable.
Yeah, it's not small, but it's not huge, right? And so, but their 3PL was taking 3 weeks to ship it. So a customer placed an order on Monday, 3 weeks later it would ship. I mean, they were getting so many emails of, please cancel my order. Where is my order? Refund me, things like that. And they were at the mercy of the 3PL that had bit off more than they could chew. They took too many customers in. They were onboarding to where they did it wrong, and they only impacted that customer. And so we actually onboarded them this year, and they're in love because we're so fast. They get an order on Saturday, Sunday, from Monday morning it's shipped. There's even days we ship the same day. So a customer goes to their website, they place an order for 3 products, they place the order at 9 a.m. Well, guess what? By 1 p.m., they got an email with a tracking number. That's experience, right? You go online, you place an order, 10 a.m., 1 p.m. comes, I was got an email, it's tracking number, it's on the way. That's experience, right? And if you can continue to drive that within your e-commerce businesses, that's how you will raise the bar for growth. It's all about the experience of you want them to come back in order, right? And if they have a bad experience with their first order, they're not going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. And what time of year was this last year?
I mean, this was pretty consistent during COVID. So, I mean, I would say the tough times for these guys, from what I understand, started happening in the summer, and it only got worse as the year progressed. Another person I talked to was telling me that they had Black Friday orders and they had huge sales and they weren't shipping till like the last week of December.
Oh my God.
It's ridiculous, right? It's horrible. But honestly, it kind of became the norm for some companies. When you have so much volume, right? When you can do this much volume, but then you get this much, right? You have to decide if you can't do more because you're at a capacity, right? You can only do so much. You have to decide what you do and what you don't do, right? And some 3PLs will make a decision. I'll take care of these guys, but these guys, we'll get to them when we can. And that's why finding the right partnerships, finding the personalization and who you use, so important. Because I used to work for a president for a very big company, and she was very, very, very smart. And we used to have great conversations. And I would tell her, I would say, hey, look, I'm your operations guy. If you came to me tomorrow and say, hey, Andrew, grow me 30% in sales. I need you to grow me in the next 1 year, 30% in sales. I would tell her I can't. But I will tell you, I can lose you 30%. And so not having the right partners, it will really, really impact the ability for you to scale and grow.
So what would be your advice to e-commerce sellers of what to look for when finding the right 3PL partner? Because I just saw a Facebook post today of somebody in one of the many groups of somebody saying, who's the cheapest fulfillment center in the US? And I was like, that's not what you should be looking for. You get what you pay for. That's the wrong question. So what would be your advice to e-commerce sellers when they're looking to find a reputable, reliable 3PL partner?
I mean, honestly, what I usually do is when I talk to customers, I'll allow them to talk to some of my current customers to let them know, get some referrals, to let them know how the service is. You want to be a lot of 3PLs, like the bigger players. I won't name them, but the really bigger players out there, they don't have personalization. You can never reach anyone that's directly in the warehouse that can walk out and touch your inventory. You really need to have, if you're a growing e-commerce company, you really need to feel like it's your own warehouse. The only way to do that is to be able to make things happen when you need them to happen. Everything can't be urgent, but when you have something urgent, you need to feel like it's going to get taken care of. If you don't feel like that now, you're losing. You're in a losing battle. Regards to price, don't always look at the fulfillment fees, the storage fees, and be like, oh, it's expensive. When you look at the P&L of your e-commerce company and you look at it from the operations standpoint, the majority of your cost comes from shipping cost. And so being able to find that happy medium of what is the best shipping method for me to meet the expectations of what I want to deliver to my customers while taking a savings is also a big part. One of the customers I onboarded towards the end of last year was using a 3PL and they were using the rates, and they switched to me. They were using UPS. I use FedEx, and they came to me and said, Andrew, same service, we saved 20%. We were spending $80,000 a month on shipping cost, and we just saved 20%. I said, that's great. I just became free for you. So,
and why is that? Why are they saving 20%?
Because imagine you ship a box with UPS, okay? And you're using your 3PL's account, okay? Because they get better rates. 3PLs, we ship more than you will individually, so we have a higher purchasing power. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so because of that, we have cheaper prices. Every 3PL is different in how they negotiate and things like that. I came from the industry. I'm pretty well connected in both UPS and FedEx. So I know that I like I told you, I was there for 8 years. That was like my first job. I did everything there. So I know how it works. So this e-commerce company switched from them, and they were paying like $10. I'm just gonna make up something, just easy numbers. They were paying $10 a package to ship it with UPS. Okay, they switched to me. They're now paying $8. Okay, now imagine that's $2, right? Now imagine this e-commerce company is shipping 15,000 orders a month, and they just save $2 per box. They just saved 30 grand. You annualize that, they just saved $360,000. I'm free.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I tell these guys is, when you save that kind of money, you have lots of options. Do you get more inventory? Do you put that money towards marketing to grow more sales, grow the top line? You get a lot of different options. And so one thing I really try and do for my customers is really try to give them the best shipping costs with the best service, with the best method, and give them different options. Some subscription companies want the cheapest thing out there. They send out 1 million boxes a month. They're like, I don't, as cheap and slow as possible. 1 million boxes, and let's say you save 30 cents a box, that's adding up pretty quick. They don't care. And then you have some customers are like, hey, they're spending $150 for this order. Let's not get the cheapest. Let's go mid-level. And so being able to really work with them strategically to see what they're trying to achieve while hitting their budget is really important. And continuing to work for my customers to drive down their shipping costs. It's the most impactful. Shipping costs is what makes you or breaks you.
So how does that conversation go when it comes to shipping costs? How do they know that they're going to be saving on shipping with you versus going with, I don't know, a 3PL down the street?
I mean, a lot of things I would do is I just say, send me your data from last month. Send me your shipments. And so they'll send shipments. They'll say, okay, we shipped 15,000 orders last month, line by line, from this zip code to this zip code. I mean, obviously they don't put their price in there, and I wouldn't want them to. I like to do blind bidding. And so, and it's not in their best interest anyways. But anyways, I would take that data and then I will populate shipping costs for them. I say, hey, look, if you want to use something comparable, apples to apples of what you're using now, look at this shipping cost. So they can take my number, look at their number and say, okay, based on this month, we would have saved X amount.
And that's all based on relationships. Like you said, I mean, relationships between the 3PL and the carriers like UPS and FedEx. And, now we have companies rising like Deliver and smaller carriers significantly, but they do have shorter lead times sometimes for local delivery. How do you know, how can a customer tell, or a prospect, I guess we can call them, how can a prospect tell that a 3PL has those good relationships? Because this doesn't just play into price, right? We saw in 2020 that if you didn't have solid relationships with FedEx and UPS, particularly around Black Friday, particularly around Christmas and the holiday season, that these carriers were cutting them off almost immediately. They were saying, no, we gave you your trailers. That's what you're getting. I don't care that you can ship 3 times as many boxes right now. That's just what you're getting. How can someone tell that they have those solid relationships?
It's a great question. And the carriers coming and cutting people off were out of the control of the 3PL. I mean, there's nothing they could do about that. They looked and said, you're doing this much volume. Our capacity is this. We can't take more than this. We'll take it, but it's going to sit in our yard for 3 days and then we'll process it. Really out of the control of the 3PL to control the carrier. Even me or someone that has a better relationship, it's tough, right? What to do in this situation, though, is have diversification. And what I mean by that is, don't have all your eggs in one basket. Don't only use FedEx. Maybe FedEx is cheaper for me, but I also have UPS, and UPS is a little bit more expensive. But I have 2 options, and then I have the post office, I have DHL, and so things like that. So having the diversification, different options. In that situation, it's about communication. I call and say, hey, look, you know what? FedEx is cutting us off. They're only going to take half our volume, but we can get the other half to UPS. It is going to be a little bit more expensive because we don't have as much spend here, but your orders are going to ship, right? And so having options and the communication with your customer, it's going to cost a little bit more, but you know what? The customers aren't going to cancel their orders. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer for a temporary amount of time,
And that doesn't just impact the customer. Sorry to cut you off, Lisa, but that doesn't just impact the customer. That's marketplaces as well, right? And your seller account, whether that's Amazon, whether that's Wayfair, Home Depot, Lowe's, it impacts your seller performance. So it's a lot more than just looking at that bottom dollar. And this is, I know Lisa and I have had countless conversations on this, where it's not that we're tired of it. It's that we would like people to understand that price is not king. It's not going with the cheapest. You get what you pay for every single time, no matter what you're doing, whether it's international freight, whether it's express air freight, whether it's 3PL in this case. It's something that I think us as consumers, we and especially consumers converting into new businesses, we bring this mindset of, hey, as a consumer, we always want the cheapest. We tend to want the cheapest product, and we think that the cheapest product, and if it has good reviews, it's going to do well. But that's not the reality of it, is it?
No, it's not at all. You're spot on. You're spot on. The cheapest isn't always better. Finding the right partner that you trust, that you feel good with, that allows you to reach the step, Deliver, these kinds of guys like that. They're great companies. They have great marketing. They have no control. All they do is hire guys like us. They don't have, ask them to deliver how many warehouses they have. They have zero. They hire 3PLs to do the work. So again, you kind of don't have much control, because if something goes wrong, you call them, and then they need to call someone else, and hopefully that person can make it happen. These are tough situations to be in when you're trying to grow your company. They can offer some things like, EPI, if you can be seller fulfilled, Prime certified, and things like that, which is going away basically, and they're not doing that anymore. But you got to find the partner. Another example is I had a customer call, and we were talking about a potential customer, that is, and they were saying, hey, look, we had a problem. We were out of stock of the item. The item was going bonkers. Like, we couldn't keep it on the shelf, right? The item comes into stock. We told our 3PL it's high priority. It was like 8 pallets. It took them 4 days to put in the system. So customers are waiting. Customers are they're still taking orders on Shopify for this product. It's not in stock, so it's not being processed. But then the communication, the 3PL just didn't have the experience, understanding of really knowing that these guys are out of stock. We need to get it in stock. It's a top priority, versus saying we do first in, first out only. It's in line. We'll get to it when it's its turn. That's not the right thing to do. You have to really judge all your customers to understand what's priority and what's not, to make good decisions for them. If you have a truck come in and you already got 2 months of inventory on it, it's not high priority, right? The stuff that's out of stock, you got to get in the system. But that's kind of like that personalization and not having so much that you don't know how to handle it. A lot of 3PLs are struggling with that because they bit off more than they can chew.
Yeah. At some point in time, the name of the game just became getting inventory. Like you said before, with everything going on with COVID, it was just, give me your stuff, give me your stuff. But I love what you said before, that if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. But tracking back to the conversation about things being outside of the 3PL's control, I'm curious, because you have your warehouse in Vegas, but you also have one in Dallas. How did you guys, were you impacted by the weather that Dallas had, and how did you guys navigate that? Or it wasn't Dallas, right? Texas is so darn big.
It was Dallas.
Okay.
It was like a lot of the Houston, Dallas. The whole city of Dallas basically had no power. I got lucky. Like, our house is like right near a hospital, so we were on the same grid as the hospital, so we had power the whole time in my house. And I also had like 25 people at my house too, by the way. So, during that time, because no one else had power. No one else had power. So including the businesses. The businesses were the lowest priority too. We were out for 4 days. What we had the benefit of is, we have customers that use both warehouses. So they use Vegas and they use Dallas. Our larger customers, where it makes sense for them to be able to spread out inventory, which is another challenge. But because they're larger and they have more inventory, they can put it in 2 different places. What we did for these guys that have the 2 warehouses is we actually moved their orders to Vegas. And so Vegas was processing and processing and processing. So for our largest clients, they didn't feel very much. And then once we came up on Friday, we worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, full shifts with overtime. And by Monday, we were caught up because of Vegas. if it wasn't for Vegas, we would have been battling that for another week. But Vegas was really able to step in, scale, and ship more orders. So when we came back, our larger customers we're still a little behind, but not that bad. And then we were able to focus on the customers that only have one warehouse, that they're only in Dallas, they're not in Vegas. And we were able to catch them up fast because we weren't so behind on our larger customers.
And for your larger customers, because I think this is important for not just the larger businesses, but businesses that plan to grow. How do they develop relationships with your team and your 3PLs to, I guess, get into this priority section where you understand their business and that you can make that decision to pivot from Dallas to Vegas? How do they develop that relationship? So I guess it's kind of flipping the script. I know how you would, or I don't know how you would, but how would they? I think it's a good question from their perspective.
Let me understand your question. Are you trying to maybe point it? Are you trying to figure out, for e-commerce companies, when is the right time to have two different warehouses?
Well, more so, how do they develop a relationship with a 3PL? And how do they continue fostering that relationship to where it's more of a tight-knit bond? Or do you think it's the responsibility of the 3PL to do that with their customer?
No, I mean, I tell I tell customers no sometimes. Like I said, I don't take on everything that calls me or everyone. It has to be a fit for both of us, for sure. It's a partnership, right? We're partners. I grow with you, you grow with me. It's a partnership. Our team is really personalized. We have account managers. Our customers have the contact information for the operations guys on the floor, the operations fulfillment center manager, the supervisors. We're on Slack. A lot of 3PLs don't do that. Maybe I'm spilling the beans, but it's nothing crazy. But they don't do it. I don't know why, but we're on Slack. So we'll have a Slack channel between our e-commerce company and us, and they can chat us anytime. And I'm in there in all the channels. I mean, I don't look at it all the time, but my team does. So everyone's assigned to a certain channel, and they can tag or they can private message and things like that. And then we typically do, depending on the size of the company, we do a lot of weekly or bi-weekly Zoom calls with our customers just to do check-ins, to see how they're doing, what's going on, what are the priorities. So between Slack, the Zoom calls, any kind of urgent communication that they need, I mean, it gives them the sense that they have control. Let's say you have an issue with a product in Amazon and you're not sure about the quality. Who are you going to call over there to see if they get that checked? It's impossible. It's impossible. Who are you going to call? There's no way. So you need that. And some bigger 3PLs are almost like Amazon nowadays. There's some pretty big ones that it's not about quality, it's about quantity. I don't need that because I own the company. We're in a great standing. I don't need quantity. I prefer quality. I'd rather take good customers, not a million customers, but good customers, and just give them world-class service. And by doing that, the sustainability of my company will continue to grow in the right way. I don't need to have 20 warehouses in the next year. I do plan to open a bigger one in Dallas end of this year, beginning next year, and then we're going to go to Philadelphia next at the end of next year. We'll have a 3 DC model, and maybe it's Canada, but I don't need to have 10 warehouses to really give good customer service to e-commerce.
And what's a bad customer? Because I think it's important to be accountable on both sides, right? As a service provider, it's important to know what's good and what's bad. That's why we have policies as service providers. But for customers, I think it's very hard for them to conceptualize what am I doing wrong? So what would be a bad customer?
So what are they doing wrong? So like I told you in the beginning, every 3PL has its niche, right? I have a niche. My niche is direct to consumer, people selling on their website. We can also do FBM, fulfillment by merchant, or eBay, all the platforms. I do a lot of Wayfair, things like that, right? That's no problem. But my niche is really targeting companies that are selling on their website, and then also helping them we do like Target or Urban Outfitters or Five Below or Whole Foods. We send inventory for them. So we'll hold their inventory, and then again, they have control, and then we'll send to them. but there's certain, so that's our niche, right? Other 3PLs don't want that. They only want full pallets in, full pallets out, or they only want, bulky products or things like that. So it really depends on the 3PL that you're talking to. Most companies like me will say, hey, we want smaller products. We can do bigger as long as it makes business sense. But, typically, parcel orders going to customers is what we focus on.
But
and then honestly, with the e-commerce companies, to answer the other part of your question, I mean, when they're calling me and we're going through the process of quoting and we're talking about our services, I ask them about their business. Not only do they need to believe in me, but I need to believe in them. If I believe that, hey, this doesn't look very good, or I don't, doesn't, for some reason I just don't feel the connection, then sometimes I would decline the business.
And so going back, I guess, to a bad customer, I understand what you're saying, that both sides need to be constantly vetting each other because it is a relationship and it is a partnership, right? And you want to be in a happy marriage, essentially. But when it comes to a bad customer, I know I have heard stories on the Facebook groups where I've seen more complaints about certain 3PLs, and I join in on them sometimes, and I will ask them questions like, hey, I just talked to someone that was looking to switch suppliers, and I talked to them about their relationships. But when it comes to 3PL specifically, I have jumped in before and asked them why they want to switch. And when they were explaining it to me in a private message, they were explaining more of like, well, I tell them, I have a shipment coming in and they don't want to receive it. And when I dove a little bit deeper into it, turns out that they actually call their 3PL the day before that it's supposed to come in. And 3PLs, of course, have operations, right? They have to plan, they have to assign, certain slots or shelving space, or depending on what the job is. If it's just cross-docking, it's a little bit simpler. But they didn't connect, the freight forwarders apparently to the 3PLs. They were doing this roundabout that just made it very complex for 3PLs. So I think that's more of what I was getting at when I was saying, or asking, what is a bad customer? Have you ever had to cut off someone because they, I guess, weren't working out for your operations and sort of the way that they're acting with your team?
I try not to do that. Like I'm a pretty loyal, honest guy. Like I'm a no BS guy, but I'm pretty loyal and honest. The only, for me, a bad customer, I mean, in a situation of that happens. Okay. So there will be situations where, oh shit, product's coming tomorrow. We don't have an appointment. We need you to receive it. It's urgent. Can you please do it? Sure. Lisa, I'll take care of you. We'll make it happen for you. It's not a problem. It happens 2 or 3 times. It's like, hey, Lisa, this happened before. I really need your help. We have to plan it out. We want to make sure that we have an appointment scheduled for you so that as soon as your stuff gets here, we receive it. It's quick. It's in the system. It's ready to go. And we take the appropriate amount of time to make sure your product's received correctly, right? We do the quality checks and all that good stuff. So if it happens a couple times, you just, like the partnership, hey, look, help me out. Help me out, Lisa. Just, let's see if we can fix this going forward. Typically, 99% of the time, that communication fixes the problem, from what I've seen. My tough customer would be like a customer that's shipping and this is my problem because I'm a newer company that's like blown up, right? Like I started off with nothing 2.5 years ago, and now we got 2 warehouses and we're continually expanding. I took on some really small customers in the beginning because in the beginning I was like, I'll take anything I can get, right? Just let me get the business moving, right? And so we have the smaller customers that were doing 50 orders, 100 orders a month, maybe 50 orders a month, 100 orders a month, maybe. So we're talking about 3 orders a day, right? It's not that much. And they would email us 7 times a day. It's like we get 3 orders a day, we get 7 emails, And so sometimes they're so passionate about growing their business, they're more focused on what's happening in the 3PL than versus focusing on the marketing and sales side, which is where they should focus on. And so sometimes these smaller customers, where it makes sense for them to actually, if you're doing 50 orders a month or 100 orders a month, just ship it out of your garage. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be cheaper. You want to hire the kid down the street to come over and do that on a daily basis and pay him $10 an hour, 3 hours a day. Do that. It's better for you. So sometimes the smaller customers can be a lot higher maintenance than actually some of the bigger ones, which is quite surprising.
I've found that to be true in all of the industries that I've worked in background screening and in event planning, and it's always the smaller ones that because they're smaller and they want to be much more hands-on, right? Because at that point in time, the business is still their baby, and they have to have a hand on everything. Once they get large enough, like you've got a guy for that. Like just talk to Jimmy, whatever. But
it doesn't add value to. Because of the way the systems are set up, we have direct integrations with Shopify or Amazon or all WooCommerce, BigCommerce. We have direct integrations with all of them. They have the same visibility that we have. They have same access to our system that we do. They can go in there, they can change addresses, they can update shipping levels. They can say, this customer called me, they need a second day instead of the standard rate. They can do that all live. So they have control of their entire business the same way we do from our side. They have the same visibility. So with this technology, they don't need to really contact us. So sometimes it was like, can you ship this order fast? And it's like, it was obviously, if you look at the system, it said this is going to be shipped today. And so things like that. So, I mean, sometimes it's like, it's a tough conversation. It's like, hey guys, can you just ship this order today? But then you look at the system, it says it's shipping today. It's like, okay, it's like you said, they're less polished, but then honestly, you have to take risks. I talked to a CEO of a very big 3PL, and he started off small, and he landed this MLM company, and this MLM company turned into like 600,000 orders a month. So the MLM company grew from like 0 to 20,000, and then went to 60,000. They call him and say, hey, I need another warehouse. He says, okay, I will do it for you. I'm going to keep the growth. So he made another warehouse, and he made another one. And then eventually a bigger 3PL came and bought him. And then he became the CEO of this bigger 3PL, which is pretty cool. And so, it's about finding the right one. Sometimes the smaller ones that you believe can become big will set you apart. It's actually exactly what happened to me. I'm a 2-year-old company. I had a meeting with the system that I'm using, which is other 3PLs are using as well. And they're like, I'm almost an enterprise account. Like I'm bigger than 85% of their customers that have been there for a long time. And so sometimes it's finding the right partner that you believe in, giving them great service and growing with them. And that's what happened to me. I landed the right one.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, the concept of smaller customers is definitely complicated when it comes to service providers, because it does require a ton of education. And just from what I see, at least, it is a lot of those, hey, I have 200 units and I want to ship in, and I want half of those to go to Amazon. And I want the other half to potentially sell on Shopify. So I want you to store it for 4 months. But they don't even have that plan necessarily. They just think that they want to do something like that. How do those conversations go when you're having them or your team is having them? What recommendations do you give them? I know you mentioned out of the garage, which is a great idea, but I mean, we have to stick to the reality of, they might be living in an apartment. They might be overseas sellers. I mean, you have people in the UK that are buying from China and shipping to the US to sell in the US, and they don't have a solution. What would you recommend to those businesses?
If they're that small and they're like, let's say you said they have 400 units and they're selling half in Amazon and half on their website, they're an overseas seller, I would say send it all to Amazon and let Amazon do all of it.
But what if Amazon doesn't let you?
They do. They'll ship your other orders.
No, I mean, because Amazon has those limits, has those inventory limits that they let sellers ship in. For a lot of newer sellers, it was 200. They did limit it. And that's why I said 2020 was so hard, because sellers that were traditionally shipping in 500, 600 units, not the biggest sellers in the world, but they were starting to grow. And so they saw the boom in e-commerce. They started to get 800, 900 units that they were selling over a quarter. And so now they're ordering more from the supplier. And it's all upstream supply chain, one layer after another. Once it gets to that inventory and Amazon says, nope, we're not taking 1,000. I know you were selling 800, but we're only taking 200. What would you recommend they do there?
Yeah, they need to find someone like me 2 years ago when I was really small, that was up and coming, or the business just started. That, the good thing about smaller companies that you're their guy. You know, when a company starts up and they're a 3PL and they're getting going and they're quite small, you're like, oh, I want to be with a big player. They're going to give me world-class service. I'm not doing that much, but maybe I will in the future. But the smaller 3PLs will give you really good service because you're going to be their one. You know, you're going to be so what I would recommend is go find a 3PL that's really small or just getting going. Go to them. They'll take your inventory. They'll be really good, and they'll respond to you, and you'll be really important to them. And that'll make sense for both.
Where do they find those? Because I think it's a struggle for them to find them. And I would recommend them to Grow Network. I don't know if Grow Network takes on ones that small. I mean, they're a small team. They have a lot of I think 3PLs already in their network to just sort of point them in the right direction.
Example. It's a perfect example. They could. I mean, they got a list of other 3PLs, and they could say, "Hey, look." They probably already know companies that would be willing to take on that volume. They probably, if that lead went to Grow, they probably would never call me and say, "Hey, Andrew, would you do this?" Because they probably know if it's that little, I probably wouldn't. But they do have other people that they would send it to.
Yeah,
okay.
I think Tyler said that they work with.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, I think he had said that they have anywhere from like small to like enterprise. I think is what he had said. So we'll tag Tyler in this and get him to add more information about Grow Network in the comments.
We'll plug him in there.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, how did you connect with Tyler and the Grow?
Tell us that story. He gave us like a very short synopsis.
What did he tell you?
He pretty much just said that he kind of got started in the industry and somehow found you and that you became his mentor. And then he went on to do Grow, and you guys have a partnership somehow with that. We've done so many of these now, and that was months ago. Oh boy, it's deep in the pile of stories.
Yeah, for sure. So I had a project in my company that I was needing some help with, and he came in and he helped me out. It was like a 6-month project. And so he came in and did some really good things. And then at that point, he went and worked for Grow. At that point, he transitioned to Grow after the project was finished. I kind of like it's not an internship, but you can kind of call it like an internship, you know, kind of like post-graduate internship, learn the business, mentor, teach. But I worked with him a lot, taught him the business, taught him how things work, and it's really helping. I think it's really helping him at Grow. So, but basically, he's bringing that that knowledge of the actual business and how it actually works to Grow, so he can actually help other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely super knowledgeable.
Yeah, he learned it all from me, by the way.
He credited you with that. He absolutely did.
He did. That's one of the main reasons we were very excited to bring you on. I mean, this is a topic that we were talking about at the beginning is not the most attractive to a lot. I call it the unsexy side of e-commerce because people look at it as just like a necessity. I'm spending money or I'm wasting money, shipping these products to customers. But like you said, it's all about the experience.
And it'll make or break you. It'll make you or break you too. I mean, it's not sexy, but yeah. I mean, if I was an e-commerce company and I would think about choosing my 3PLs, this is either going to make me or break me. It can go either way. And so, yeah, you're right.
It's the foundation. It's 100%. Supply chain in general is the foundation, but this is, that last mile before getting it to the customers, which is the most important part. Doesn't matter if you have it in the US if you can't ship it to your customers. But how have you seen this grow with your time, going from fulfillment centers? I'm sure, as e-commerce grew, 3PL started to be more prevalent. But how did you see this rise in 3PLs, not just over the past 2 years, but since you sort of started?
In terms of, I don't understand exactly what you're asking me though.
I guess, how did you see e-commerce impact? And it seems like a silly question because obviously they have a very close correlation, but how did you see the boom in e-commerce bring this new industry of 3PLs up to where it is today? Were there any struggles? Were there any issues that the 3PL industry as a whole had to sort of figure out? Because it's no longer retailers using any warehouses to cross-dock or distribute. It's now all online orders, all technology. Right. So I'm curious to know if there was any struggles that you might have seen in the rise of 3PLs.
The growing pains of 3PLs and the e-com boom.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's different. It's different. I mean, I thank you for explaining your question. I got it the second time. So e-commerce fulfillment, especially when you're doing like pick and pack, is quite a bit different than sending a bunch of inventory to a retail location or to a retail distribution center that then sends it to all stores, And so it's much more complex. There's still 3PLs today. They're like, I don't want to do e-commerce fulfillment. It's very complicated. I mean, imagine a warehouse that has 10,000 SKUs and you got to go pick these 2 and put them in one order. And then you got to go over here, pick 3 of this and put it in one order. And then you got to go pick over here and pick 1 and put it in one order. It's quite complicated. And there's a lot of strategic background of how you do it and where you put what where and how you get your employees to pick it the most efficient way. And then how do you get it labeled and how do you get it packed? How do you make it personalized for all these different types of customers? Every customer wants it done a little bit different. How do you scale that with them? It's a very complicated business. A lot of 3PLs stick to do what they're good at. And some have tried to do it and they don't do very well and they end up hurting companies. But it has grown 3PLs quite a bit, the shift. I mean, the shift to go from, and it's grown transportation companies. How do you think Amazon has their own transportation network? It's because of the e-commerce. I mean, Amazon is now a competitor of UPS and FedEx. One of my good friends works for UPS, and FedEx has already done this. FedEx stopped picking up Amazon stuff. They said, we're not doing it anymore. Well, for UPS, it's 12% of their sales, so it's a little bit harder for them. But I said, they're out there to destroy you, man. They're trying to squash you guys. You got to stop picking them up. It changed the 3PLs. It adds a lot of complexity, but with the right technology, the right people, it can be done. But you have to know what you're doing. Some random guy, a lot of 3PLs that come up are e-commerce companies. They're like e-commerce companies like, hey, I got a little warehouse. I ship my own orders. I'm really good at this now. Well, hey, buddy, we're friends. You own an e-commerce store. Let me do your stuff too. You can pay me. I'll give you a great price. I'll do it. And then they start doing it. And then they fall flat or they start killing their friends' companies. It's because they're not experts. I'm not an expert at going and marketing a product for e-commerce. I mean, I don't know how to do it, but I do know how to move it and fulfill it and ship it and make it as low cost possible and give world-class service from that perspective. So thinking to what you're good at, I think is really important.
Yeah, staying in your lanes it's definitely important, especially when it comes to e-commerce.
Stay in your circle. Stay in your circle. I've said that to many people many times. So stay in your circle.
Okay. Another thing I have been curious about, do you know if there's any good education out there on 3PLs? And just to give you a little bit of background as to why I'm asking is because, first of all, there's this huge rise in e-commerce sellers, right? No offense to a lot of them don't, I don't even want to say they don't know jack shit about like supply chain. It's the reality is it's just a crude reality. So when you talk to them about things like truck waiting fees and demurrage and truck storage fees and truck waiting times and all these different costs, they're like, well, what do you mean? I paid my freight forwarder. Well, if you don't talk to your 3PL about when something's going to be delivered and that's waiting out there overnight, you're paying, a couple $100 extra. If it's a full container and it's floor loaded, then it's not going to just take 2 hours to unload and you're outside of that truck waiting fee, you're going to continue paying hour per hour. Is there any education out there that you have or anyone else that you would recommend has when it comes to 3PL or supply chain?
That's a good question. For the customers that I take on, I actually have a very close onboarding process to where I tell my customers, I'm really like your vice president of operations. Mm-hmm. Like I do our sales and marketing. I have a strong team that does all the operations. But during the first 3 months of onboarding a new customer, I'm very close to them. Very close to how the orders come in, how the inventory goes out. And so you could almost call it like a one-on-one free lesson of, hey, tell me about your business. I'm going to tell you about mine. This is how things work here. Tell me what you need. I need it packaged this way. I need it when the customer opens it. There's tissue paper. They open it and I get the wow factor. They have to teach us that so that we can implement it. But on the other side of that, as we're creating that partnership in the very beginning, it's also about us telling them what they need to know. We know our customers are not fulfillment people. They're not, right? I'm sure there's a lot of material online they can find on Google, but a lot of time the best way is to be working with us. And the other part of that is sometimes paying that couple $100 one night will make you never do that again.
But to a lot of sellers, that's a lot of money, and it's not just a couple $100. I mean, if they have it waiting in the truck yard because they didn't schedule with 3PL or they didn't make the appointment. I've seen instances where they thought that the freight forwarder was going to contact 3PL. That wasn't the case, and so it's just waiting at the port, and they're getting hit with these port fees, and it's a couple $100 every single day. And it adds up to, if you have a few containers, it's a few $1,000s. And that could really impact those businesses.
That's more of the supply chain front end. The 3PLs, like guys like us, we're not usually engaged in that part because when it's incoming from the containers and then it's off the containers and then it goes through, it gets passed through and it's approved to come into the US. That all happens before us. We can always help them with that, of course, but we're more focused on, in my company, of the process of once the inventory arrives to us, we get it checked in and then we handle all the shipping and the orders. Yeah. That front side should be really whoever's helping them with their transportation, to have that also a good partnership with whoever's moving their freight. A lot of times it's the suppliers. Sometimes the suppliers in China get the best rates. Like, they'll quote out guys here and then they'll say, hey, supplier in China, who's it going to be? And the supplier in China will always get the better rate. And that's fine, use them. But if you're spending a lot of money with that supplier, they're also going to help you bring it in. They can help you as well. It's all about the partnerships, really. And sometimes you're right, man. They'll go with the cheapest option and they will get dinged. And that cheapest option will end up being a lot more expensive than that mid-level option that would just got it there in a better fashion. Don't always go cheapest.
I love that. That is a great note to end on, because that is, again, something we've been preaching for forever. So, Andrew, as we're almost at the hour mark, why don't you we'll give you an opportunity to just plug your logistics really quick, and then let us know wherever people can get a hold of you if they have questions about any information that you shared today, if they're interested in getting started with your logistics. Yeah,
I mean, I appreciate the time. I really enjoyed talking with you guys for sure. Your logistics, we're really great service providers. If you're looking for a 3PL to really be there for you, to really raise the bar for your customers, to make things happen when you need them to happen, we're a great fit. We typically look for customers doing 800 to 1,000 orders a month, direct to consumer or more. That's typically our niche, where if it's 1,000 or more, we can definitely work together. Typically, if it's a little bit less than that, it probably doesn't make as much sense for us, but there's definitely a lot of 3PLs out there that can help you. Definitely our website, www.yourlogisticscorp.com. You can definitely reach out to us. There's a page there. You can just contact us. There's a phone number. There's an email address. Gives you a lot of information about our company. And the main thing for us is also we can help lower your costs. I've onboarded a lot of customers, and their shipping costs have gone down, and they've gotten better service, and we can scale with you. And so, being able to know that you can call me anytime that I can make things happen for you. I have a large team, but with my main customers, I have a very close contact to them, so they can reach out to me anytime, and we can make it work for them. So, I think that's a highlight for me.
Perfect. And we will definitely link the website for your logistics on the audio version as well as the YouTube version in the description of both of those episodes. Well, Andrew, thank you again so much for coming on the show. We've really appreciated our time with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great talking to you guys.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening, and we will see you all tomorrow.